to Purposeful. I'm your host, Ashley Bernardi, founder and CEO of Nardi Media, an award-winning strategic communication and media relations firm that helps mission-driven leaders, authors, and organizations turn meaningful work into messages that move people. And at Nardi Media, we don't just chase headlines, we build authority. We help our clients clarify their message, train them to show up powerfully on camera and on stage, and secure earned media across national TV, top-tier podcasts, and major publications so their ideas reach the audiences who need them most. Purposeful here is an extension of that work, creating space for thoughtful conversations with people who are using their voice, their platform, and their leadership to make the world better. And today's conversation is about one of the defining challenges of our time. I've been so looking forward to this. How do we lead when the world feels increasingly uncertain, complex, and chaotic? So joining us today are Nicholas, Janni, and Amy Elizabeth Fox, internationally recognized leadership experts and co-authors of the incredible new book, Leading in Chaos, a Clarion Call to a New Future. Together, Nicholas and Amy bring decades of experience working with CEOs, senior executives, and organizations around the world, helping leaders navigate transformation, complexity, and change. And what I love about this book is that it argues that today's challenges cannot be solved with yesterday's leadership models. Instead, leaders must develop deeper capacities for presence, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and human connection. And in a world that's marked by disruption and polarization, what many call a polycrisis, they invite us to move beyond control and certainty towards consciousness, courage, and coherence. Nicholas and Amy, welcome to Purposeful. I am so excited to have you both for this conversation today.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. It's delightful to be together.
I mean, as a leader and as a CEO and reading your book, which I have right here and all the pages that I have marked up, I'm so excited for this conversation. Before we dive in, I'd love for the two of you just to talk about how you came together to write this book and why did you feel called to do it now?
Well, Amy and I have known each other for a while, and we've known that we both pursue a similar depth of work in the organizational world. And I think we've been waiting in a way till everything aligned. And when we met in the middle of last year, we realized that we'd both already written quite a few short pieces. And I've always loved reading Amy's pieces on LinkedIn. And it very quickly gelled that if we put them together, we had a potentially very powerful offering for people. And that's really how it happened. We just so much believe in each other's work and how it's amplified by putting our two voices together.
And I would just add that both of us, I think, feel a very heightened sense of urgency
Mm.
to give people, the leaders that we work with who are really exhausted, oversaturated by information, seeing their context swirling around them. So some orientation, some deep understanding of what are the contributing factors to this kind of kaleidoscope moment, and what are
Yeah.
some resources for expanding your leadership repertoire to manage the kind of chaos people find themselves in. So
Yeah.
I think exactly as Nicholas said, it's a deep respect for one another's voice and one another's work, and the belief that there's some learned wisdom over the last 20 years of our working with top teams, with CEOs, with senior leaders that's relevant in this moment uniquely.
Yes. We are in an extraordinary time. And I think the challenges that we're facing are really an urgent call. And they really are a call to wake up because we're sleepwalking. And, one of the first most essential parts of waking up is to recognize what we've normalized. And in order to recognize that, we have to slow down. Because part of what we've normalized is going like that,
That's
which
right.
means that we really don't see very much. And we don't have proper time to say, hey, what are we doing? What are we really doing? How are we listening or not listening to each other?
Okay.
So, yeah.
I want to dig into that a little bit further because we are living in such interesting times as leaders. There's so much changing. The world is changing. AI is changing. I'm so curious. What are the struggles what are you hearing? Because you both are boots on the ground with
Mm.
these CEOs. What are some of the biggest struggles that business leaders are facing right now with uncertainty and polarization? and just disconnection and more.
I mean, I
Amy.
think one of the things I would say is there's a level of change fatigue or adaptive
Mhm.
exhaustion. The second is the speed with which new challenges and new contexts are arriving on their door. So if horizon planning, strategic planning used to be thinking about 3 to 5 years from now, 3 to 5 years from now is next week. So there's an acceleration of change demand that I think people are grappling with. And there's also a rising level of anxiety in the workplace, existential
Yeah.
threat from AI, but lots of changing geopolitical forces that no longer can be kept at bay from showing up in organizational cultural fabric as a higher level of fear.
Mm. Yeah, and I
Nicholas,
think there's
yeah,
a
go ahead.
there's a very high recognition that things are just not really working.
Right.
And the reason I think we believe, one of the main reasons that things are not really working is we're using navigational tools that are out of date. And the
Mhm.
primary navigational tool we're using is linear thinking.
Right.
And in the face of complexity and chaos, linear thinking alone is totally inadequate. And that's part of the call. We're being called to wake up intelligences we have that have been suppressed under the domination of linear thinking.
That's right, and you brought up an interesting point is that we've normalized this in the workplace.
Mm,
I've seen it, I've
exactly.
experienced it myself, having to kind of I remember my first job, I just felt like I couldn't express the full Ashley personality. I had to suppress a lot of who I was to fit into this corporate mold, to be like everyone
Mm,
else. And I'm curious if you can expand upon those other intelligent aspects of our human selves that you want we need to be calling into the workplace, that these times are calling us to, like you said, wake up and expand beyond linear thinking. So what does that look like?
Well, exactly as you said, Ashley, we've built organizational culture on an industrial or technical model of the workforce, which means it's anti-embodiment. We're
Yeah.
working well past people's mental and physical levels of exhaustion. It's
Mhm.
anti-emotion. You're supposed to check your
Mhm.
feelings at the door and not have
Mhm.
any relational intimacy in the workplace. And it's anti-spirit. We spend very little time thinking about self-expression, creativity, artistry,
mm,
purpose. And all of those estrangements or exclusions come at a very high cost of people feeling held, people feeling a
Yeah.
sense of belonging, people feeling a sense of self actualization in the workplace, and therefore lower trust, lower psychological safety, lower innovation capacity, lower collective intelligence. Some of the business imperatives that are needed as the picture gets more and more complex and unpredictable, where you need a lot of voices at the table, you need a lot of dissent to struggle with and refine your solutions,
mm.
are going to be absent if people can't bring their full humanity into the workplace.
Right.
Nicholas.
And another way of saying that would be also that there are many ways we're operating in a narrow part. It's like we're on the piano and we're playing just in the middle. So
Mhm.
embodiment, it's not just an idea, and it's not going to the gym and doing stuff to your body. That's still disembodied. Embodiment is when we come deeply home to our body. And the body is a profound way of knowing and feeling the world and getting information about the world. Similar with our emotional body. I can feel you with my emotional body. I can hear your words, but I can't feel you with my thinking. When my emotional body is open, we feel each other, and that's a huge source of connection. Intuition is an extraordinary source of information, far more than we realize most of the time.
Mhm.
So we're utilizing a very small part of our total knowing capacity. And it's not enough just to know things like that. It's also a very impoverished way of living because we don't feel really alive.
It's almost feels like self-abandonment. I'm just because
Ah,
I've been there.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful word. I totally agree with that.
So I'd love for you both to share, what does embodiment, emotion, spirit, intuition look like in a workplace and for leaders? Because I imagine This is a very hard concept for leaders to grasp when we've been so conditioned to think so linearly. So when you're going into these rooms saying, "All right, get into your," I'm just curious, what's the response like? And maybe they're grateful too, but like paint the picture for us and for our audience that's listening to this today.
Well, I'll just give one example. I run an exercise very early in my leadership programs in which we talk about the wall or the shield of self protection from
Mhm.
behind which we all operate in these sort of routinized, prescripted ways that we're pointing at in this conversation. And I ask senior leaders, what's the cost of that? And they name very poignant costs. I'm disconnected from my own emotions. I don't express
Mm.
gratitude. I don't know who I could ask for help. I
Mhm.
feel like I'm an imposter. People don't trust me. I don't get followership to the degree that I would wish.
Mm.
So they're describing a level of isolation and loneliness relationally, but they're also describing the way in which it keeps them from captivating people's imagination and engagement and enthusiasm. So once you have people naming the costs and feeling for themselves what the loss of their own heart is, then or the disconnection from their body,
Mm.
it's not that difficult to then invite people to do a meditation practice or to do a martial arts practice or to just
Yeah.
come alive in new ways. And it's also incredibly easy. I often say it
Mm.
takes a very short time to go from frozen life to love. You do not have to teach people how to extend their heart to accompany someone else's healing process. It happens very naturally. Once one person is willing to step in and offer their vulnerability, it's like an electric wave through the room. It grants permission
Mm.
for everybody else to show up in their highest possibility, to show their kindness, their tenderness, their willingness to extend themselves to each other, and it's beautiful to watch. It's
Mhm.
like water coming back into a riverbed that's been dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow. It's also pretty simple, actually, using some
Yeah.
very simple, like I talk at the very beginning about doing and being, and I
Yep.
explain what they are. And people very quickly understand that they've been hijacked by doing, and they've lost that sense of being. Okay, that's a great start. I talk about flow. I ask people, do you know how flow feels? And most
Mhm.
say yes, and we list how good it feels. And then I ask, so what percentage of each day on average do you live in flow? And there's a kind of slightly shocked silence because the answer is somewhere between 5 and 10%. So shall we really take
So
that in? Shall we take that in, what we
yeah.
normalized, and let's talk about why and how that could be greatly extended. So people were already engaged then. This is not an esoteric conversation. It's very real and very pragmatic. Do you know
It's
what
hap
listening really means? Do you really know? Can you remember the leaders you've worked for who, even for 1 or 2 minutes, gave you a quality of attention? Yeah, everyone can remember those leaders.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
this is what we're talking about.
Wow. Yes, there's so much that the book talks about that you two do this work with leaders. One that I mean, there's so many. One that comes to me is the numbing, having that conversation. Can you talk about that process of like having people list out what they numb, but then have a collective conversation about it, which I feel it feels so vulnerable, but it also feels so safe, and it also makes you feel not alone. But I just that one really stood out to me because I think we live in a world of numbing, of social media, of all sorts of addictions. So would love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Well, the first thing is not to judge that and to actually explain why we had to do that. And
Mhm.
it's very simple. You're a child, you're 5 years old, you're frightened, but your environment is busy. They're not there to hold you. You actually have only one survival choice in that moment.
Yep.
It's not complicated. It's really basic. So we all did that over and over again. And then we're okay, let's start to explore that. Amy does amazing work, I know, with this.
Yeah, and just to build on what Nicholas said, I think we are helping people connect the dots that many of the
Mm,
things that are derailers at an executive level have antecedent history in being very incredibly creative survival strategies in childhood, right?
Yes. Yes.
They were necessary imperatives earlier on, but their sell-by date has already passed.
mm,
And so we help people revisit these early childhood habits that have walked with them for a long time and aren't serving them in the current context. One of those
right.
is this habit of numbing. is the
Yeah.
feeling like I can't hold my feelings. They're overwhelming to me. And people use a huge array of technology to numb themselves, and you would have to, because if you live in
Mm-hmm.
a world that says separate the personal from the professional, you have to numb yourself because otherwise feelings would arise, emotional needs would
Mm-hmm.
arise. The list isn't so interesting in terms of how they do it, but what's really gorgeous and touching every time is when they start to look at the costs. And
Mm.
you get things, I pride myself on my autonomy and I don't have an ecosystem of support around me. Most senior leaders cannot tell you who they could ask for emotional support, or if they can, it's one or two. Certainly not a circle of care. And the other one, which I think is more invisible but poignant, is because I don't feel myself, I don't feel when the people around me are in struggle or in need. And I don't get to experience myself as a generous waterfall of care and
Mm.
nurturing because my blinders are on to the next task. So by
Right.
unnumbing, you start to have a much greater perceptual range of empathically what's going on around you. We could also say, writ large, if an organization doesn't feel the world, they can create ecological damage, they can create damage to
Mm-hmm.
the communities that they serve. This numbing function has costs at micro and macro levels of the system.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do naturally meet a kind of threshold point of fear of my emotions. But once it's
Mm-hmm.
safe enough, I do a lovely writing exercise and people go away and write very personally. And then they come back and they share in small groups. And it's almost always the threshold moment in a program because they start to be really vulnerable together. And it's just exquisite afterwards when we come back into the whole group. The whole room is different. But people have also discovered something very important, Amy said, because we tend to believe we're the only one who's carrying fear.
Right.
Everyone else is fine. That's what we do. I know I've
Yeah.
done but so it's beautiful when people read, no, we are all human. And not only that, because I quite often work with a group of multiple countries and organizations. And I sometimes say, so now if you six people were an intact team, would you be working better together? Of course we would. The level of connection and energy and critical thinking and generative ideas is much higher now. So there is no way this doesn't make full sense, basically.
Well,
And I
I-
love, it's like, it just feels like you two get to be witnesses to probably what feels like beautiful miracles of connection coming together. So
Absolutely.
tell us what happens when leaders go through this process with you both or read the book. What do you see start working once they're infusing embodiment, emotion, spirit, intuition into the workplace? What then changes?
Well, I think the first shift is actually quite personal. I think many of them go home and repair their marriages, help their
Yeah.
children get into treatment, really spend some generous time attending to their family and their personal lives, which are often long neglected in the case of a very successful, high powered executive. I think the second impact goes directly to their team, exactly in the way that Nicholas says. I think they go back and invite their team members to share about their
Mhm.
interiority in a much more intimate way than has happened before. And that builds, as you said earlier, Ashley, a level of coherence, a level of trust, a level of mutual solidarity. Amy Edmondson wrote a book from Harvard Business School, wrote a book in the last 6 months called The Right Kind of Failure, talking about how important it is for teams to be experimenting in the face
Yeah.
of complexity and learning. And you can't have that kind of developmental orientation if you're in a mode of competition and distrust.
Right.
So I think it has a huge impact on their teams. And many of these leaders also serve as CEOs of large organizations. So they start to look at how could I be a vessel for there being more creativity, more aliveness, more sense of affinity to these qualities of humanizing the workplace in the organizational culture that I'm building. And how am I role modeling that? I would also say that it's not unusual. I know this is Nicholas's experience for us to get letters from people who took the program 5 years after they took it, 10 years after they took it,
Yes.
and to view this as a catalytic moment, even in hindsight. It's not just an epiphany in the moment. I mean, you can see before you, exactly as you said, miraculous unfolding and healing
Yeah.
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
tremendously a privilege to get to witness that. But what both of us know, because we've done this for 20 years, is it has a long tail.
Mm,
It's
Yeah.
transformation, meaning it's not the kind of change that has a narrow shelf life. It's
Right.
once you see things, you can't unsee them. Once you've
yes.
attended to the closed rooms of your heart's house, you can't close them back up. You walk with them. These are sea changes that happen in programs like this.
I
And for the
can give you one very powerful example. I have to try and give it in a way that doesn't reveal any actual details, but this is a CEO client in charge of nearly 200,000 people. And he just wrote me the other day that he'd had a meeting with the governor of the state where he works, who's written very publicly critical of him. And he's done an extraordinary amount of inner work with me, this CEO. And he said, I managed to relate to this man far beyond my antagonism. And he said we had an extraordinary meeting, at the end of which the governor agreed he will never make one single public comment anymore.
Wow.
That was yeah, I've got chills saying that. That was only possible because of the inner work he'd done.
It's that's exactly what it's the inner work that is where, because I was going to ask, where do leaders who are listening start today other than, okay, read the book? But it is really that inner work that's been neglected for
Mm,
so long.
yes.
And I guess I can't help but why? How did we let it get to this point? I wish, like now that I'm on the other side and I've read the book and I feel like I've done the work, but I also feel like I've been hoodwinked into being dehumanized at work. And I don't want that for my children and my grandchildren. So how did this happen? And how do we now ensure it doesn't happen to future generations?
It happened because we got programmed from a very young age. I mean, look at our school curriculum. Is
Mm,
there anything about what it means to feel each other
no.
or be embodied? No. But the major obstacle now as to why it keeps happening is very simple, I think. It's fear. It's fear of my emotions. It's very simple. If you say, like, a lot of top teams I know now begin meetings with 2 minutes silence. And if a business executive says, oh, we don't have time for that, that's ridiculous. There's actually only one reason they're saying that. In 2 minutes silence, they're going to start feeling their anxiety. And they've never
Yeah.
had a safe space to do that.
Hmm.
Because if every team who does that reports as they do, we have much better meetings. There's no business case for not doing that. There is only, I'm scared to feel what I feel.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to make such a warm-hearted, safe space. Once we're through that threshold, everything starts to change.
And I think the motivation you just expressed, Ashley, which touches me a lot, I don't want to pass this on to my children and my
Yeah.
grandchildren,
Mm.
is
Yeah.
often the reason why a leader stops their very busy life and starts to look because they
Mm.
care about their legacy and their lineage. And
Yes.
we are the generation that has the therapeutic tools, the coaching tools, the leadership tools to actually be the ones who stop these practices and start
Yeah.
living in a bolder and more thriving way. I had one leader come up to me at the end of the program and he said, I want to thank you, Amy, for giving me a place to cry the tears I've walked with for 63 years.
Wow.
And I thought, we're living in a lake of uncried tears and we don't even know it.
Yeah.
So, there's something also, I love everything Nicholas said, and he said something in passing I want to just highlight, which is creating a warm and safe space where it
Mm.
becomes safe to look. I
Yeah.
think because everybody is in a really a layer of fear about what it would mean and the feeling that it would be overwhelming, which is a very early feeling and not true
Yeah.
of an adult executive choosing to engage. It does seem to be that it's helpful to have a group of peers. It's helpful to have
Mm.
facilitators and coaches. It's helpful to set aside a purposeful time, whether it's a 2-day retreat or a week-long leadership program, and be intentional about what you're opening up. And I think that's the craft Nicholas and I take very seriously.
Yeah.
We do a lot of training for practitioners and how to prepare to be such a person that can accompany this process.
Yeah. It's also a beautiful part of what you were saying, Ashley, about not wanting to pass it on. Because there's often a moment, particularly in a longer program or in one-to-one coaching, where we turn towards our lineage and we understand what they didn't have the opportunity to feel. and how that has been passed on. And it suddenly all
Mhm.
makes sense that
Mhm.
I'm the one who can break this chain by being willing to feel. There's a beautiful sentence, it's in my first book: hurts are passed down through the generations until
Mhm.
someone is ready to feel them.
That's right. Whew.
Yeah,
I really feel that on a personal level. I've been thinking about my own personal ancestry and just what my ancestors have gone through. But like even more closely connected is my father, who was in the military and never showed like just there were
right.
no emotions. Like that was just how the military is trained. And even like how I was raised as a colonel's daughter was like children are to be seen and not heard. Like we've been silenced from a young age, and now I'm at the point in my life where, okay, I mean, my dad definitely amazing war hero, but I unsubscribed to not feeling my feeling. I want to feel my feelings because I have learned the hard way that when I don't feel my feelings, it actually becomes a disease in my body and comes out other ways. And then I don't want to pass it on to my kids. So I love that you're bringing this up because it's almost feels like we as leaders carry not just our emotions, but whatever's been passed on to us.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
And
just to build on that, Ashley, in a group of 25 executives currently, there will almost always now be 5 to 7 executives whose teenagers are anorexic or self-harming or have suicidal ideation. So it's not just it hurts our bodies, but it's gonna scream from the next generation. And I think that teen crisis, a mental health crisis, is a collective responsibility.
Yep.
And we not only do we need to get the young people help, but we need to start doing our work so that they don't have to scream.
yeah.
That's and I feel just because I have a 16-year-old daughter who recently told me that the entire school system is broken. It's designed like a prison, and there is no, I mean, she's an artist and there's no room for what her soul is calling her to do. And we're hopefully giving her the outlets, but I think they see it. They see it,
Mm,
and then they're like, this stinks because I have to fit to this societal mold, when really I want to go out and like paint the world and be creative. There's just I think our youth see it, but then they also carry on what they see of us that's unhealed.
Yeah, and I think we have to hope that our generation will do our work
Yeah.
and free up that generation to go paint the world.
So what gives you each hope and optimism about humanity's future? Because the work that you're both have been called to do seems very hard. I know you've said it's simple, but it's like, oh my God, this is a huge undertaking. I'm just so curious about the hope that you do have.
I think both of us take great joy in the beauty of the world. I think both of us feel deeply inspired by watching the work that we do touch people and
Mhm.
ripple into their families and into their organizations and therefore into the world's architecture. I think it is incredibly hopeful to
mm,
to actually start having the conversations that have been unspoken for a long,
Yeah.
long time, start to have life and start to animate themselves. It's really touching. And although the stories are often full of pain and suffering and great
mm.
resilience, you can feel the relief in the air that they're finally being held and witnessed. And I think both of us draw great strength and great conviction from that.
Yeah, hugely. And yeah, absolutely. I draw great hope also from two more things. My two children and my stepdaughter, 29 and 32, are extraordinarily committed to their inner development. And I find that regularly breathtaking. And then also the bigger picture. Ashley, have you frozen? I think Ashley's frozen.
Good catch.
Are you back? I
I'm
think you
back.
froze.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I
You,
froze for a second. Sorry. Keep going.
and I also, because like Amy, I'm deeply committed to spiritual paths and traditions. And I'm hugely aware that this time was absolutely foreseen and named as a junction point for humanity. And it's clearer and clearer to me that. So when I see how much awakening is coming in, how much connection is coming in, and how quick and more quick people are to be receptive to this kind of work. I just find it an extraordinary time to be alive.
It really does feel like that, and I love that you bring, the word awakening. That seems to be the theme, right? Just there's awakening that
Mm.
we all have that potential as leaders, as parents, as partners. That there's an extraordinary moment that I feel we are all being invited to experience right now by doing that inner work. And I'm just curious because I've been asking myself this question a lot lately. Is our inner work ever done? Because I keep like
No,
peeling layers and I'm like, not done yet.
no,
So,
no, no, it's
what-
not. It's forever.
yeah.
Of course, it's never done. It's not a weekend workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
And
think that there's a misunderstanding of the spiritual path that there's a destination you're walking to.
mm,
Right.
Surely you should be there by now.
Yeah.
And I think it's more precise and more kind to yourself to think about I'm using my daily life as the field of my practice, and
mm,
whatever is arising in my experience that's triggering or somehow knocks me off balance is a GPS towards what's unfinished in me, which is an endless layering, unlayering. And
Yeah.
there's nowhere to get to. There's no
That's
rush.
right.
This is it, everybody.
I love it.
Our teacher, Thomas Hubel, has, I think, the most beautiful thing to say about this, as Nicholas was alluding to. He says, if you know you're walking forever, then you have all the time for now.
Yeah. That's so
that's beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So beautiful.
If
yeah.
you know you're walking forever, then you have all the time for now. I'm just repeating that again for our audience.
And I mean, you're thinking of children as well. I love it when I hear a leader say to me, yesterday I picked my daughter up from school. And normally it's kind of routine and, a little bit bland. We had the best conversation we've ever had. I find that deeply touching.
I do too, because
That's the medicine. That's the medicine the world needs
yeah,
urgently. And it's also the medicine that's going to make organizations much more able to meet this difficult time.
it's so true. And I think having those like deep conversations, it just makes me think, well, isn't that what life is all about? What it is supposed to be? And we
Exactly.
are now it's our job to do the work of the unlearning, undoing of how we've been conditioned, do that inner work. And I think this is why the book is so timely and so needed. And I am so grateful that you both have come together to write this. It's like it speaks to my soul, and I know for anyone else out there, it will. I'm just so profoundly grateful. And I'm just curious, like, if we could look ahead in your own crystal balls, like 10, 20 years from now, what is a world that has embodiment, emotion, spirit, intuition, awakening?
Well, we mentioned a couple of
Yeah.
practices, which maybe I'll say briefly, and then Nicholas can give a big picture. One practice is that when you join a company, it would be just normal standard operating procedure that you get assigned to a role, assigned to a team, assigned to a division, and assigned to a nest. And a
Yeah.
nest, a small group of 6 to 8 people in the workplace who meet every month. And the only purpose of the nest is to support you emotionally and to walk with you in a tight community so that you don't walk alone in your life. A different example is I'd love to see a world in which you not only could call in sick, but you had 3 well-being days. And
Yes.
you're calling in well because you need to go walk by the ocean, or you're calling in well
Yeah.
because you need to go to your daughter's play, or you're
Yep.
calling in well because you need to snuggle up with Netflix and a hot cocoa, but that there would be more permission for soulfulness to be prioritized and revered. And a last example, just to make it vivid, is you wouldn't join a team without the team, or constitute a team without the team taking time to share each other's life stories, starting 2 generations back. So you build the relational fabric and the mutual understanding and the compassion to really know each other and to trust each other and to recognize everybody's vulnerabilities, that everybody will be triggered by certain things. And if we build those skills for co-regulation and emotional intelligence into the life of that team, I believe we will start to see a whole other level of creativity and inventiveness.
Beautiful. Yeah, so I would, of course, absolutely loved all of that. And I would also say, if you ask me what I would envision in 10 years' time would be a world where connection, where we would have ceased to abandon ourselves, to use your
Mm.
beautiful words, Ashley, and care, connection, and giving as a natural flow of life would be the predominant nature of our interaction in our culture. And flow, instead of being an occasional experience that we drop into, would be most of our experience, and we would occasionally drop out of
How fun would that be? I think that should be all of our collective North Star today. I just want to just thank you both so much for this conversation, for writing this incredible book that is going to be serving this world for years to come. I know for me, it's one of those books that you can go back and continue to read and then still find new things, right? And that's
it.
like what I love about some of my favorite books. So I just want to thank
Thank
each
you.
of you for this beautiful conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's a joy to talk like this with you.
It
And then,
really is. We could do it for hours. So tell our audience where we'll put things in the show notes, but where would be the best place for folks to go to get the book, to learn about workshops and other things that you're doing?
well, we're both well represented in the website of the book, which is Leading in Chaos Book. And that's got information about our firms, also an offering we're doing in the autumn, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
And there's so many ways that people can work with you beyond the book. I think the book is
Yeah.
like step one, come and read our book. Here's your invitation. But then, as you mentioned, there's workshops one-on-one, but there's other ways, and just going to the website, leadingin chaosbook.com.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Nicholas and Amy. This has been
Thank you.
such a delight. I feel like we've been in flow. It's been so beautiful. And I'm just appreciative of both of you. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And to our listeners, thank you again for joining. And remember, the work starts with the inner work. So that embodiment, that emotion, that spirit, that intuition. Today's conversation was about bringing our full humanity, all of us, into the workplace and beyond. And as you had said, I took so many notes, but just coming alive in new ways, that it's coming online and coming alive in new ways. So there's a lot of this unlearning, undoing, and just like moving away from the conditioning and really feeling into your spirit and your soul. And yes, there's a place for that in the workplace. So thank you, listeners, for joining us. And we will see you next time. I am Ashley Bernardi, and this is Purposeful.